I'm good to travel
Okay, cool.
for people I like.
Okay. So, can you go ahead and introduce yourself,
Sure.
please?
Is there a name for your show? Like, what's up?
Yeah, it's called I'm Being Seriously, and I'll
Ooh,
explain that
I like that.
after you introduce yourself.
Okay, cool. My name's Garth Trinidad, and I'm like overjoyed to be here with my friend Alexis,
Yay!
former production assistant and just all around badass.
And can you explain what you do? What has been your career and like stuff like that? Your titles.
um, yeah, flurry and a bunch of stuff. So DJ guy, radio personality, event curator, producer. I produced some music and done a little music supervision and consulting, and just kind of like want to spread the good culture around town and to people in the world. And I continue to do it, but on a much more sort of abbreviated basis these days because I feel like I want to stay semi-retired and like loose and just kind of get back to like my other creative endeavors. So
Technically, are you retired?
semi. I mean, I still work, but I don't want to work. I want to be in alignment with like creating, and then that being how I make my living.
Yeah.
So I'm staying open. Just kind of learning and being in the flow. Learning to be in flow and like being in flow. It's a daily practice.
When did you start DJing? Like, when did that career start?
I started DJing because of radio. That was 95-ish, and then I was on the air. And if I was at American Radio Network, ARN. I was just telling you about that place in East Hollywood in like 94, 95. And so I started to learn radio and DJing then. But by the time I was on KCRW in 96, and people began to listen, and like the bookings started coming in, I really had to like learn how to like rock the ones and twos. And so I had friends that were, really sort of already deep into, like the LA house party DJ community. And one of those guys was my roommate, DJ Mayo, Feel Free Entertainment, big up 100 always, Chocolate Wax Buddhas. And so when he moved in, he moved all his DJ gear, and he's like, "Yo, man, like you need to like get up every day in the morning and use my gear. Like you're collecting records, get on the turntables, and learn how to mix, learn how to like do what you need to do." So that was mid '90s.
Would you say he was like your mentor in some way?
Definitely one of them. Yeah, one of the first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did anybody ever tell you prior to that you have a good DJ voice?
Yeah.
Or you have a good voice for radio?
Yeah, I was okay. So my voice was crazy during puberty. Like I had a crazy, scraggly, like my voice didn't know what it wanted to do kind of voice. It was like I'm sure other people wouldn't describe it, but personally looking back, it was like nails on a chalkboard. Like it was crazy. So when I hit 16, 17 years old and my voice dropped, I would be on the phone with operators, like women, and they started to flirt with me. And a couple of them even like asked me out. And I was like, "Oh, I'm like really young." And they're like, "Oh, well, are you over 18?" I was like, "No, I'm 17." Like, "Well, I can't. You call me back at this number when you turn 18 and we can go." I was like, "Oh my God." So the voice is actually doing things. And so a couple of them would say, "You should be on the radio." Like, so that's when it started. But I didn't start thinking about radio until my dad, when I was like, it was summer after high school. He's like, he kept giving me newspapers, like, go through the classifieds and find a job. You can't just be up in here not working. You can't eat all my food.
Yeah.
And I worked. I had summer jobs and stuff like that. So one of the jobs I found, or the opportunities I found, was the ARN. They had an ad in the paper, and that's how the whole radio thing started. They were like, "Hey, come down and audition, and you could get paid for doing radio." I'm like, well, this looks like it could be something. And I was always trying to think outside the box.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't want a regular job. I
Yeah.
never wanted a regular. I never had a regular job. You know, I've always run from like that whole idea of having a job. I want to always kind of do my own thing. You know,
Yeah.
you could relate. You know.
Yeah.
So that's when that started. It was 93, 94 when I started going to ARN. Have you heard of that place, American Radio Network? I mean, it's not
No,
around
I
anymore,
haven't.
but it was run by devil worshippers. They had a whole temple in the basement with a pentagram on the floor and everything. It was crazy.
What?
Yeah.
Are you religious?
No.
Okay.
Kind of used to be.
Have you
but
always? Okay.
I grew up Catholic. You know
Me
the
too.
deal, right?
Yeah,
So did you?
same.
Yeah, we could go down that rabbit hole.
I was traumatized.
Say less.
What do you think about radio now, like, and where it's going and the direction, like, where it's at right now?
I think radio is bigger than it's ever been.
You think so?
Well,
Okay.
Well, okay. So I consider podcast radio.
Okay. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
When I think of radio, I'm thinking of like mainly audio broadcasting. It doesn't have to be on a terrestrial network. It doesn't have to be AM or FM. So you have satellite radio.
Uh-huh.
You have internet radio. You have podcast networks. I feel like radio is huge around the world. Are you familiar with that app, Radio Garden?
No.
Okay. So a few years ago, Tom Schnabel, who's, you know, the OG
Yeah.
host of Morning Becomes Eclectic, you know, one of the building blocks of KCRW in Los Angeles, sort of, you know, culture in general, jazz, world music, etc. He hit me to this app called Radio Garden, and you download the app or go to the site, and there's just like a visual of Earth, right? And what you can do is like zoom in and turn the Earth, and you start seeing these lights pop up, and they're all radio stations around the world, and you click on those lights, and you can stream that station
That's so cool.
anywhere in the world. It's amazing.
I guess it is. I guess when you look at radio, it is about perspective because it could be so many things. And I guess what I'm used to is just like, you know, a radio station like Kiss
Yeah.
FM,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
KCRW. And that's, I guess you can interpret it differently now because there's so many outlets to.
So you think about radio, you're still sort of
Yes.
stuck on terrestrial like
Boomer
ideas
radio,
of boomer radio. Word. Okay. I get that.
Yeah, okay. I honestly thought you would have maybe responded differently.
I think that terrestrial radio is having a hard time because of how, you know, large
Yes.
audio broadcasting is.
Yeah.
You know.
Me and my friend were just having a discussion about this because he started his radio station, like an online radio station.
Which one?
It's called Heady Radio.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I already like it.
Yeah. And he actually used to be at KCRW too. So that's how we met too.
Cool.
So we kind of got inspired by just being there. And yeah, so we were just talking about how, you know, he's doing that on his own and I'm doing the podcasting right now, and how we're kind of considered disruptors for actual like old time radio. And we're kind of diluting this like audience in a way. But depending on, you know, if you stay true or consistent to what you're doing here, you can get something out of it. But there are a lot of people that are inconsistent with it. So they're also just diluting this whole audience of like listeners. So I think it's kind of cool.
Are you doing any programming for Heady Radio yet?
No.
Okay.
I don't have a lot of time. I have a full-time job and I do this on basically my days off, on like my spare time. So no, but I did mention to him that I do want to be like a guest DJ eventually, just not right now, because like me being in the studio, I'm still getting adjusted to it. I've only been at the studio less than a year and I'm still learning a lot of equipment stuff, a lot of programs, and I'm just like learning a lot. So I don't feel like I have a lot of time for things.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I'm semi-retired and I have no time. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, what? Like my goal was to have more time, and it's like the time is always getting sucked up somehow. So yeah, I totally understand. It's like I think the passion, you have to be in alignment with the passion in order to like make the time to
Yeah.
pursue certain things, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of KCRW, how long were you there?
Ooh, 90, I started volunteering in 94. Yeah, 94. So I was there like as a volunteer, you know, in the front office for a while,
Yeah.
doing all that old school
Like
stuff,
answering phones and stuff?
pre-internet stuff, like literally, like if somebody called during the day, you know, and I was there at the front office, and they'd be like, "Oh, I was listening to Metropolis last night. You know, Jason played this song. Can I get a copy of the playlist?" I'd have to. They had a paper archive of playlists that the DJs were responsible for, and it would go in a folder in the front office. I would have to dig in the folder, find the date, photocopy the playlist, put it in an envelope with the person's address, and mail it to them.
Damn,
Stuff like that,
that's
you know, and
crazy.
then get people coffee and you know all like do all those kind of running around on campus errands for people. Did events, and then I ended up you know working my way into the studios. I mentioned Tom Schnabel was the first person I trained with
Mm.
as a production assistant, and then I became Liza Richardson's PA for a while, and then she was the person that said, really was kind of like, "What are you doing here? This place is so white. We need like people of color. We need black people. We need
Yeah,
like black pro. We've lost like all of that, and so here we are with like all these white programmers."
right.
And I'm like, she's like, "Where's the soul? Like, so are you interested in doing anything like that?" And I'm like, "You know what, Liza, I would be interested." And she took me under her wing, and she mentored me. Tom mentored me. Jason mentored. I really learned how to like mix a certain way because Jason allowed me to come to his house whenever I wanted to in the morning before he went to work. He set me up on his like DJ rig, and he's like, "All right, you can record your sets like this, da 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 da, whatever." So like I had a bunch of mentors actually.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So and Liza had this sick record collection, like unbelievable. And so she helped me like put together my demo. She let me raid her record collection to put together my demo, which I presented at the time to Chris Doritas, who was the music director and host of the morning show.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris was like, "Yeah, we should have him on." And so they started to like, you know, have me sub for different DJs, and then time slots opened up, and that's how Chocolate City was born.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then so what year did you exit KCRW?
On in
Mentally and actual
Oh,
literally.
mentally it was an evolution, but I felt like even like during the pandemic, even when you know because there was a sad and lonely part to that because like they stopped allowing like staff was on rotating days in the evenings when the DJs were doing the nighttime stuff like me. No more production assistants were allowed, and I really thrived on having company.
Right.
Um, even it was just even if it was just the presence in the room with me, like I really there was an energetic exchange, and I really appreciated and enjoyed like having people with me in the studio. I mean, you remember like I'd always have visitors, you know, or sometimes it was just me and you or whatever. We were just chilling and I was doing my thing. And so when that stopped, I was like, "Oh man, it's crazy to like walk into this 3-story building and know that there's no one else here, you know?"
This is
Um,
already when the move happened.
yeah, because the
Okay.
pandemic was like, you know, we were already in that new building,
Yeah.
right? Um, so mentally I was like, "Oh, this is weird, and it's weird to be on rotation and all this, you know, 2 weeks would be me, and then it was 2 weeks of like Travis in the evening, and then you know it was like we called it the Rona rotation or whatever." But I was present because you know I loved playing and sharing the music like that was always my joy,
Yeah.
you know, in sharing. No different than like being in my living room playing records with people, you know, it's the same idea. But I left. Um, it was February of 2021, and I went on vacation, and I just never came back.
That
Yeah. Yeah, that was it.
was it.
Yeah. So,
Did you tell anybody like about this idea or that you were just planning on it?
no, I had been working on an exit strategy for a while.
Did
It just
anybody else know?
No, not really. Not like, well, I think there were people that knew I was thinking about
Oh, okay.
leaving,
Yeah.
um, but my decision not to come back after that vacation,
Nobody knew.
it was just like, yeah, no, I don't think I'm coming back. Yeah.
How is it? What was the difference from like the new building to like from the basement? We're in a basement right now. It's
Yeah.
kind of
I
funny.
like basements.
Yeah.
I'm always like basements are always a vibe for me. Speakeasies, basements, underground. It's just kind of I'm in alignment with that because I'm always, down for the underdog. I'm down to, always keep things bubbling, and you have to be like I just feel like you have to be under the surface for that.
Yeah.
Um,
It also felt like KCRW was growing to not be this underdog anymore,
yeah,
and it was more just like, like
yeah,
a corporate thing.
yeah, yeah. It kind of it just made sense because they were expanding and growing, and taking a more corporate route. Getting more money, and it was like, all right, time to leave the basement. It almost felt like, yeah, and I guess there's a way to do it, right? Like they could have remained in the basement and taken a different approach or whatever, and still been in alignment with that sort of basement mentality. But yeah, I think that they were shedding that skin, and everything evolved. That's the only constant in the universe and life is change and evolution, and that's what was happening. So I just the change for me, it was visceral. Like I felt it, you know. And that was, I feel like it was probably one of the reasons why I started to think about leaving because I really enjoyed the basement and what it felt like,
Yeah.
sort of internally and externally. It was like a cyclical reflection constantly. Like, yeah, I'm going down to the basement because my headspace, my heart space for music and what I'm attempting to do, which is quietly fight a war against the mainstream
Yeah.
or bring a different perspective to just music and culture in general. um, I felt good like going down into the basement to
I
do that.
felt like when you would enter the basement, it was almost like you were disconnected from the whole world.
Yeah,
And it felt like that for me at least.
yeah,
I It was just like so cool to be down in that basement, and it was just all radio. Like it was all just programming, and it was a really cool experience to be there.
absolutely.
I never actually got to be in the new building, so I wouldn't know what that was like.
Oh, that's right, you didn't.
Yeah, when they moved, I just decided like I'm not moving either. Like
I keep
I'm not
forgetting
moving
that
with.
I lost you after the basement.
Yeah,
It's been a really long
it's
time.
been a long time, but I don't know if you remember this.
Sheesh.
The last time I saw you, it was you were DJing at a hotel in 2020. It was like New Year's 2020, and
It was New Year's Eve.
yeah.
Oh, that was the Mayfair party.
Yeah. It was that one. That was the last time I saw you, and I was pretty wasted, but but you were just like looking at me, and you're like, "Hey," and then yeah, I was like, that was a really cool party.
It was, dude.
It was so much fun.
It was. I think it was my first. Well, no, maybe not my first time doing that long of a set. I love doing like extended sets. I do not like doing an hour.
Yeah.
Like 2 hours minimum is like a good feeling for me. But like 3, 4, 5, like that was a 5 hour night for me, and I was like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about.
It was sick.
It's
I had the
fantastic.
best time. That was the last time I saw you, but the last time we were in the basement, I can't even remember. It was probably like 2018 or something.
Wow, dude.
But one of the last few conversations we had, you were actually telling me like we should start a podcast. You said that, and you're like, you should start a podcast, and I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, you were like wishy-washy, but I think I was telling you back then, like you have the personality, and you have such a beautiful voice. I like listening to you
I
talk.
hate my voice. I
Really?
still like can't stand listening to my voice. As it is, like my voice is very inconsistent. So it like has highs and lows.
Yeah, I don't feel that way
You
about
like your
voice.
voice is very just like it's like one tone in a way. Mine goes like
It's so funny
inconsistently.
because I'm attempting to learn, so I'm trying to improve my whole voiceover work trajectory. I have to like get out of that monotonous tone that you're talking about. Like
I think it's a good radio tone. Like you hear my voice right now, it's like goes up, and
yeah,
then it's like
but there's
it's
that's
very
not inconsistent though.
expressive.
Yeah, which is what you need.
I don't know if I like that.
Well, I enjoy it a lot. So
Thanks.
just encouraging you because I think I did the same thing when we talked about it back then. I was like, you got the voice.
Yeah, and I said no, I
You're like,
don't.
no, I don't.
So I wrote down questions because I have like attention problems, and I know you didn't want questions, but
No.
I wrote
I
questions
said
for myself.
I didn't say I didn't want them. I said like don't send me the questions before
Okay.
because I didn't want to like be overthinking.
And you know it's crazy. Like I appreciate that because I'd like to be spontaneous with conversations too, but last night I started getting anxiety. And then I was like, oh no, what if I freak out and then I have nothing to ask? And so I started writing all these questions. So initially, I was going to be like, no, it's going to be cool. Like, no questions. It's going to be very organic. I wanted to talk about music, like now, and like who has surprised you in music that has kind of possibly changed your mind about their music?
That is, wow, that is like a question I wish I would have asked. Oh my, that's a phenomenal question, and it's quite like putting someone on the spot. I think that's a great question. I'm gonna have to sort of.
You can think about it.
I gotta think about like. Well, it takes me back to the past because off mic we were talking about how you're a bit detached from music at the moment.
Yeah.
I did the same thing because my exercise for that was like I wanted to get out of DJ brain, meaning when I listened to music, I could not help but think about how to utilize it. And I wanted to back away from that and get back to listening to music for the sheer love and joy of appreciating music. Like, not that I wasn't doing that in my process, but my brain was all, like, no matter.
It was more work.
When there was music playing, a commercial, a movie, a TV show, on the street, someone's car, like whatever, I was like, how could I use that? That's dope. I should play that tonight. What is that song? It was just like working.
Yeah.
So I was like, yo, I gotta pull away. I gotta stop so that I can reset my brain to just be a music lover again.
Yeah.
You know? It's still hard because like once a DJ, forever DJ, but I'm getting better. So
do you create like playlists and stuff just now?
Right now, no.
No? Okay.
No, I'm just like
no playlists.
I use Apple Music a lot, and I'm just like I have like the same two playlists I've had for like 3 years or something.
That's really terrible for a DJ.
Yeah, I know.
You only have 2 playlists.
But you know, I mean, my brain is so full of music. It's like usually what I'll do is like pull up an album or a single, like, oh, you know, I'd love to hear that, and I just put that on. But yeah, I haven't made, because all I did was make playlists. You know what I mean? So it's just like kind of pulling away. So I'm still in that process. But who has surprised me? God, that's a great question.
You can still think about it. I was just mentioning, for me, I actually read somewhere that the older you get, the more closed-minded you are, obviously, and I feel like that is very true, especially with like amongst Republican people and like very conservative people. And that actually applies with music as well. So the older you get, the more closed-minded you become to music. And that explains a lot why older people can't stand what the younger people are listening to. It's just they've already closed their mind. So for me, it was a couple years ago, I started to realize that I was listening to the same bands, the same playlists, the same music, and I'm barely like branching out into being like forcing myself to be more open-minded to music again. Because I felt like when I was in my 20s, I was very open-minded to music, and I saved all these songs on Spotify, and then I would listen to them like a couple years later, and I'm just like, I hate this song. Like, so I feel like I'm opening my mind up, and that also applies to even just pop culture music now, pop music. when I was younger, I would try to distance myself from pop music. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of it felt very trashy to me, but I feel like there are artists nowadays that I can acknowledge that have they have brought me to become like some sort of a fan, you know? Um, like when I was younger, I wouldn't be caught dead listening to Drake. Or like, I don't know, like Bad Bunny,
Mm-hmm.
right? And now I can just like easily listen to their music and just appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah.
And they've also probably developed and grown as an artist too, which is another reason possibly why they've just been able to open like a broader audience.
Yeah.
But those are like some of the two people that I'm just like, okay, like I'm starting to open myself up more to like popular music now.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel you. Like, I totally, it resonates with me because when you're at a place like KCRW in a city like LA, in a country like the US, there's kind of a different mindset going on where, like, for me, because of my sort of fandom or fanship of the station and what was happening there as far as like underground forms of music, be it, jazz world, electronic, dance, whatever, hip hop, etc. Um, it was like when I got there, it was like, all right, I'm in position to like fight that war I mentioned
Yeah.
earlier. You know what I mean? Whereas my first few times like going overseas, I got to see that the mentality was just different. It was like it was a different kind of music appreciation that wasn't so there wasn't really this sort of as much of a division between like pop music
Right.
and like underground. It was just like, no, all these things are like relative and everything has its place.
Right.
And that helped me sort of open up to, a different kind of music appreciation. I think even as a kid, obviously there were, I loved a lot of pop music, but when hip hop, because I consider myself a child of like the first hip hop generation. I was born in '74, so like by the '80s, I was like pop locking and breakdancing and the whole thing, and it was just like that was my thing. And hip hop, especially then, was very underground, breaking through to mainstream popular culture. So there was already this attitude that I had as a kid. I feel like as a DJ, I viewed everything and programmed everything, even the most avant-garde, or whatever, even dance music and electronic music, through the lens of a child of hip hop. Everything was about like the beat and that like underground, raw, sort of rebellious aesthetic,
Yeah.
in everything I did.
And I think it also reflects with even the house music that you choose too. I think you can tell there's a lot of like soulness in the house music that you choose,
Definitely.
which I appreciated. Like you and Aaron, you guys were my favorite DJs because for some reason, like you could play just. It wasn't even the genre that like I really cared for, but it just had a lot of soul, and that was something that I appreciated a lot, and my ears appreciated a lot, especially listening to it in the basement. Like the sound was just really good there.
I don't want to get too far away from the first question, so my brain has been like thinking of
Okay,
examples.
good.
So you mentioned Drake. I'm gonna say that Drake. I don't know that he surprised me, but I wasn't aware until I really started paying attention, um, of his like desire to expose like artists from around the world, right? Like I'll say that if it wasn't for Drake, I wouldn't have known about Thames, and I love Thames,
Yeah.
and he does that,
Yeah.
and I really appreciate that about him. And I'm not anti Drake by any means. I appreciate his music. I don't care that he's gone through all these sort of iterations of influence with all the different people he's hung out with or whatever.
Right.
For me, it's just about his aesthetic and like how his music feels, and I think that's why he's successful and consistent.
Yeah.
So there are songs that I love that are Drake songs, and I'm not ashamed of that at all. But like when I was on KCRW, it was rare. I don't know that I ever played like a Drake song.
Yeah.
But you can hear DJs now on KCRW like sliding in more mainstream songs. Not even remixes and stuff, but like the actual songs.
Yeah.
Like you'll hear in a set. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I would say that Aloe Black got me. He kind of surprised me, and I thought about music differently because of him and because of the direction his shift of trajectory. You know, Aloe was a person who was with me like, you know, back in the early 2000s, like making drops for Chocolate City for my radio show. He did this beautiful Spanish language version of John Legend's Ordinary People because he has a very similar vocal quality to John.
Uh-huh.
And when I played Aloe's Spanish version, everybody thought John had recorded the Spanish version. But yeah, Aloe would do like these dope like drops. He's a prolific, you know, hip hop producer. Like he made these just disgustingly good like beats. And then he had like a project with this cat named Exile, and he's a dope MC. He has bars, and then when he started singing, I was like, oh. And then he really took the soul music thing to heart, and that's what he pursued. And I did not expect that from him because I really loved what he did as a hip hop artist.
Yeah.
So I'd say he's an example. And then like what Anderson Paak did, I think, you know, his sort of, I feel like he's a chameleon, and so he's gotten me to sort of, he surprised me in a few places and gotten me to think differently about
You know, it's
stuff.
funny. I had a specific question. What do you think about Anderson Paak? And it's because I have so much. I don't know how I would describe it. I probably placed him in a box, and I only liked what he did when he was doing like when he did Malibu, when he did Venice, or when he did No Worries, you know? And I put him in that box, and I can't seem to like really allow myself to listen to what he's doing with Bruno Mars, and like I don't like it, and it just doesn't feel like him to me.
Mm.
You know how people can't let go of Kanye West,
Mm-hmm.
and he like says he's Ye now,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody wants to accept that.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of similar for me. Like,
yeah, I get it.
I don't want to let that go because I thought that sounded a lot better than what he's creating now. How do you feel about him?
I love Anderson, but it, the love I have, right, like the way I feel about like what he's doing has to do with like my knowledge of him as all those years as Breezy Lovejoy. You know, knowing that he spent all those years like singing and playing drums in the church, having interviewed him numerous times, kind of like watching his evolution and enjoying like his spirit and like who he is. And even if I might not like what he's producing or putting out, like there's a part of me that's going to enjoy what he's doing because I feel like he's an example of like what the journey of an artist could and should be. Like
I agree.
like the artist should never, like the audience is always going to want to put the artist in a box.
Yeah.
But the artist should never allow that to happen. You know what I mean? You know, and that's so many artist stories, of course, you know, going back to the beginning of, you know, artists doing art, but he makes me happy to like watch an artist at work. So I like you, am also stuck.
Yeah.
Especially on No Worries. Like No Worries is my joint.
I'm very happy for his journey because I know he's come a long way, and he deserves every bit of his success, you know. And it's really cool to see from, you know, like as an old time fan, like to see his journey of where he is now, and like it, you know, I think that's something to be proud of, and it really shows, like, you know, to some people, if you really stick at what you love, like you can make it.
Yeah. But the other thing about art is you don't make art so that you please people. You make art to pursue a passion and something within. So it's difficult, you know, for artists because we live in, you know, this like
capitalism.
This you know, we live in an overtly capitalist, you know, kind of disgusting system that does not treat art well, in my opinion, in the West, especially in particular, the States. But
I think it distracts the artist, right?
Yeah, you know, because it's like, oh, we have to make a living, and so in
Yeah.
order to do that, we have to. It's like, oh my God, it's like now the art has to suffer,
Yeah.
or the artist has to suffer, or become something that's not authentic to them because they have to, you know, make something out of it. And it's like the audience. What I'm getting at is like the audience has a right not to like some shit, but the artist cannot be offended by that. The artist just has to keep making art.
True.
You know.
True.
So it's never supposed to be this thing that's just all flowers and shit. It's just like, no, you make art because you want to, and whatever.
Yeah, and I think like for me, that was one of the things for like Bad Bunny. He put me onto a lot of Spanish music that I didn't realize I was like open to. And I actually feel more like um I feel more connected with like my culture and stuff.
Mhm.
He's Puerto Rican, I'm Mexican, so that actually doesn't even work, but in the language it does, you know? And because he's worked with like Mexican artists, then I, you know, start listening to those artists, and then I'm starting to listen to just like what they're putting out and stuff. And I think that people like Drake and Bad Bunny have put a lot of people on, and I think their influence is it's kind of like a phenomenon in a way. And I think it's important, as maybe cheesy or corny as it sounds, I think like it's important to also be aware of that, to give him that type of credit, right?
Absolutely.
Because a lot of people don't want to give pop stars credit for like things, you know?
Of course.
And like I said, I'm trying to be more open-minded for music now because I'm aware that my brain is like trying to tell me no. Yeah, so I'm just trying to like learn a little more music.
I feel you, man. When I was like intentional about disconnecting from like the DJ brain, my music brain started going to like old school shit.
Yeah.
It was like,
Naturally.
yo, I want to listen to some slow jams
Yeah.
from the 80s.
Yeah.
I want to listen to my favorite salsa joints. I want to listen to 90s hip hop. It was like, I was like, wait, no, like I have to be listening to like more shit than this, you know, because you got to exercise the muscle.
You know, it was a really sad experience for me. I love oldies music. And I took my parents and my boyfriend to see Brenton Wood at the Long Beach Convention Center. And it was so bad. The sound, like, just like whoever was like the sound engineer or whatever, everything was like echoing. And because of that, I just like, I'm triggered by it. So for those reasons, I have a hard time listening to oldies right now. I literally just went like in February.
Oh, that sucks.
And also seeing Brenton Wood, who's literally like on life support right now. I don't know why he's performing.
Because he probably needs to pay those medical bills.
It's really sad to see, honestly. Like, I was really just like, damn.
He probably got a bunch of baby mamas he's still giving money to.
This is not a good experience to watch. So as of lately, I've been like, all right, I won't listen to this song right now. Like, it's kind of sad.
I feel you.
What have you been listening to lately?
All that old school stuff I was telling you about, but there's a jazz drummer out of the UK.
Yeah.
His name is what's his brother's name? Is it Yusuf Kamal? I think. His latest record is just absolutely stunning. It's just so beautiful. I went to a listening party or session for that months ago, and like I'll tune into that every once in a while. That's always like the worst question because it's funny, right? Because there's so much music in my head. I'm like, oh, I should know this. Anytime anybody asks me that, I'm like,
No, I'm the same way.
It's weird.
I just thought for whatever reason you were better than me.
No, I'm not. I'm probably worse than you are.
So I was like, he has to know off the top of his head.
But I mean, I'm listening to stuff and I'm just thinking like,
Yeah.
what am I listening to?
No, I'm the same way too. Like I can't even answer.
I
that
might have
question.
to. Some stuff will come to me.
You're gonna have to think about it.
So bad, so bad.
What have been your most memorable inspirations for a playlist? Have you ever felt inspired and you're like, I'm gonna make a playlist out of this?
Absolutely. I mean, that's how I program my shows.
Like I have a playlist that I created a long time ago. It's a breakup playlist, and it's the cheesiest, corniest thing. It has like all the worst pop
That's so
songs.
cool.
Yeah. But I was inspired by a breakup to make that playlist, and then it helps you feel better
Yeah.
over time.
2022, I did this like cool little sonic experiment where I used because I'm almost like anti-social media. I'm really poor, really bad at social media.
Me too. It sucks. It sucks because I have to like try to promote this thing. And I'm really bad at it, so same. I'm just like
Same, absolutely same. But I committed to doing like a mixtape every month in 2022, and it was very thematic. I like themes, and so each mix, which is basically, I mean, it's not a playlist, it's a mix, but was based on how I was feeling currently, and like my sort of like blowing up my whole life in the last few years, including sort of walking away from my career, because it wasn't just KCRW. I was like, yeah, I need a break. Like, I have other things I want to do, and so I don't want to like turn 60 and still be like doing this or something adjacent and like thinking, oh, I still have time. It's like, no, dude, like you need, like, if you want to do some of this stuff, you need to like make time. Like, you're talking about time, and it's like you can't do this anymore if you want to do those things. You got to do something else.
Right.
So the series of mixes was like a culmination and a compendium of like all these different ideas and thoughts and stuff that I was like, I'm gonna like focus and like do these like thematic mixes. So like one of the mixes was like, like an ode to jazz that I put out in April, which is like Jazz Appreciation Month, and it was like some of my favorite jazz tunes, and did a cool mix. One of them was like a meditation on like what it means to be a person of color, in life and death, like the sort of meditation on like ego, and like ego's role in the sort of attachment to form, and that also means like your experiences as a person of color is like, for me as a black man in this country. And so one of the mixes was titled like Black After Death, and what the theme was like, all right,
that's a cool title.
Either the artist and or the songs have to have the word black.
Mm-hmm.
So that was that whole playlist. I did one called like Anthologies of Memory, where it was just like going back to my childhood and all the things that kind of made me into like the DJ programmer person I am, and kind of like created a mix out of that. There was like a full on like meditation on like love and breakup and all that kind of shit mix. There was like a sex tape mix.
In that one of your childhood, was that very like, were those songs from when you were younger in that playlist, or were there songs where how you were developing or growing into adult? Is that what you added in that playlist?
It was definitely like
things that reminded you or triggered you.
A time capsule that included both.
Okay.
Like literal songs from my childhood.
That's pretty cool.
And then newer, like there was some Tori Moi in there and like some other stuff. It was like, oh, okay, you put that in there too. So it was kind of like a life compilation of music, but like just some random stuff.
Yeah.
Like I had like Outkast, mixed up against like Quincy Jones. Like it was, crazy stuff like that, and like new wave. It was bugged out.
How do you find music? Like, do you intentionally, I know you're trying to distance yourself from like being on DJ mode, but like, how do you find music?
Right now, what's been happening, because I haven't been sort of voraciously pursuing new music, or even, discovering old stuff, I do a lot of Shazamming, like you could be anywhere.
Yeah.
Club, coffee shop, waiting room, on the street. Like people have pulled up to me playing something, and I will like Shazam that shit, like, and try to get it.
Yeah.
Or like
I've done
try
that
to
too.
stay alongside. Be like, oh, like, all right, it's okay, got it. Movies, is a big thing. Like I love music supervisors for that reason.
Yeah.
I mean, same thing when I was, on the air and in the clubs or whatever, like music supervisors were like sharks. They were always coming up to me and swimming around like, what is that? What is that? What is that? Or like, directors would either call themselves or have their assistants or producers call me while I was on the radio, like, hey, Michael Mann needs to know like what you're playing because he wants to use this for, this new movie he's working on with Jamie Foxx and Tom Cruise. Like, we need to know who is that? Oh, that's like that Salif Keita Oshun Lati remix. Like that was always happening.
Yeah.
So I do the same thing as a Shazammer, like, yo, what is that? So these days it's that. It's like a lot of Shazam and a lot of just paying attention to what's happening around me if I like something.
Have you ever memorized like lyrics so that you type it in?
Yeah, I have.
Me too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I do that a lot actually, especially with oldies.
Yeah. There's been times where like I'm in the parking lot and I hear someone like bumping music and then I can't Shazam it, so I'm trying to like listen for the lyrics.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to like type them in. There's this one that I will not, like, I have like 3 tabs open from it. It was like 5 years ago and it's still on my phone. And I just like typed in several types of versions of like these lyrics that I heard and I can't figure out what song this was. It was like a reggae song. And for the life of me, I just won't let it go.
Don't let it go because it'll come to you.
Yeah.
You'll get it. I have the same tabs. I have tabs from like way back in my phone.
Yeah, me too. That's so crazy.
Yeah.
And recently, because I was running out of storage because I have like to record these and everything.
Yes.
I've had to delete some of my tabs, and so there have been some times.
Do you translate them into your notes?
No, I've been letting go of a lot of things in my phone, like just tabs of reminders.
Music stuff you should figure out a way to keep, like screenshot them and I don't know, put them on a drive, like whatever, because music is an investment.
Yeah, and it's crazy. I used to do that so often. I used to screenshot things and like hold on to the title of the artist or something, and I don't really find myself doing that anymore. And I feel like it's because I'm a little busy or occupied, and I really do need to preserve my storage before, I mean, eventually hopefully I get like better equipment, but for now, like, I really do have to preserve my storage.
Before I forget, another way I find music is through my kids.
Okay.
One of my daughters, my middle child, who's a Pisces like dad, happy birthday, Nadia, by the way. It's her birthday today. She's 19. She just touched down in South Africa.
Damn, that's so cool.
she's an adventurer. She spent the last couple of years of high school in Germany, and she's taking a gap year and moving around and stuff. She's doing all kind of great stuff. But she is like, punk rock music lover, extreme. She's a musician. She's been in bands and stuff. She like us back in the day. She listens to everything. So like when we hang out, like we'll listen to music together. Like she'll overtake the aux cord and play me stuff, or she'll be like, yo, what was that house song you were talking about, and I want to know more about house, and you need to like make a playlist for me, and we need to talk more about, like, she always wants to go down those rabbit holes. So she gets flowers because she keeps me like don't forget about like all the good music out there.
Hopeful.
So
do your other kids, do they have an interest in music as well?
Hell yeah. My son, who's 17, literally like told me, I don't want to get a job because it's going to infringe on my making playlist time. He's like I need my free time to make playlists. So, I'm like, all right, as long as you're doing well in school, like I'm not going to sweat you too much. I'll keep
when they
giving you
were
money.
younger, did you instill like or push music on them?
Not push, they were just exposed.
Okay.
And they weren't just exposed, like it was less so, they weren't really like around at home like during my process. And I was really kind of in my headphones anyway when I was doing that.
Yeah.
They were just out with me. I took them everywhere.
Yeah.
Like when they were little, I would like walk on stage at the Hollywood Bowl with one of them in my arms and like let them talk to the crowd, like, where they would be on stage with me in Chinatown during the DJ gigs or whatever. If ever there was like a gig that was all ages and they were allowed to be around, like I had them with me.
Yeah.
I would let them like mess around with the DJ rig. Like, yo, if you do this, you can EQ out the bass, or this is how you change a song, and this is if you want to mess around, if you want to play around with the knobs and the channels. Like, I had them doing that. Like people would be dancing, like, who are those kids? Like, oh, those are his kids, and they're playing. All right, cool. So they were just it was just a matter of exposure.
Yeah.
So they when they were little, they were tuned in because they were always like, I was always, let's go to this show and I'm gonna host this, and
Did
I
you
got
want your
seats.
kids to be heavily involved in music?
No,
No.
I just wanted them to understand that being passionate was a good thing. It didn't matter what I'd never there was never a conversation where I would suggest like you should do this. It was just like, do what you love.
Yeah.
If you love it, let's do it. You just have to. My thing with them was like, because I was noticing what was happening, like with the sort of generations that they're in, the expectation for like immediate reciprocation for things, or like the having to earn something without really doing the work to earn it. Like, no, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
Like you have to do the work.
Yeah.
You have a dream, but you have to do the work to build a dream. So
Yeah. And I think a lot of these like Nepo kids, they don't understand that.
I never heard
One of the
that.
things I respect about Shaq is that he said he's not gonna I think he's not gonna put his kids in his will or something, or he's not going to give them money unless they go to college and finish college or something. And it's because he wants them to know how important work ethic is, and that they need to work for something before they even get any of his money.
There's been a couple of like, at least I've heard, like celebrities, like I think Jackie Chan has the same sentiment. Like, this is my money. Like, I worked for this.
Yeah.
They can like work for their whole money. So, but yeah, for me, it's like, I'll support you as long as like you're committed to doing something.
Yeah.
Like, just commit to if you're doing the work, if you put in the work, if you're going to school, if you're achieving, I got you. That's how it works. But
yeah,
yeah, it's about the work.
Do you have an opinion on like the entertainment business, since I would say music and radio are kind of in that sector?
It sucks. It's garbage. It's trash, man. Like, I mean, capitalism and art it's hard, man. It's tumultuous. It's rough. It's warfare, and it's just exploitation. And then I think, that's when you have the cosign, or you're, a star at a certain level of entertainment. But like, if you're independent and you're doing things on your own, it's still a war, because you have to like do things on your own. Like, that's really hard work. I mean, we were talking about that when we were walking in here. Like, it's work.
Yeah. What is your example of like exploitation?
I think the music industry, when you're talking about recording labels, independent labels, are taking up a great deal of, the market share right now too. I have a feeling they're to like, I don't know, I haven't checked in a while, but it's like, last I checked, they were getting close to like 50% of like market share. So like the output of indie labels is like increased because of, what's happening with major labels. And so people are leaving major labels and starting indie labels. So it's just a lot that's happening in the market. But
can you explain what's happening with major labels? Like,
well, major labels are sort of imploding on, I think, what are there, like 3 or 4 major labels now? The eventuality is it's going to be like one company.
Right.
That's where things are headed.
Same with like movies and stuff.
Yeah,
right?
like, I mean, we're witnessing, I don't know if it's the end of Hollywood, but it's certainly the end of Hollywood as we know it.
I have so many bad feelings about Hollywood. Like,
I mean, I think it's
a sick place.
That's the devil's playground, man.
It's a sick place.
It's twisted.
There's a lot of men that are just like pedophiles, and nobody wants to admit that.
Like I said, it's a war zone.
Yeah.
Really.
Which, that's Hollywood, but I still feel like obviously Hollywood and the music industry intertwine in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm asking you, because you do know some part of that field, and I know you've been exposed to like some people and stuff, so like I just wanted your take on that.
I think that you can find beauty everywhere, righteousness everywhere. You know, comes down to personal relationships, um, and whether or not a relationship is authentic or whatever. But I think that when you generalize the industry itself, it's certainly the way you describe it. It's an evil place. It's foul.
Yeah.
It reeks, and that's why that's one of the reasons why I'm like, an advocate for like the underdogs and the underground, is because there's freedom there. And freedom is just a foremost principle in my life.
Yeah.
It just I'll never give that up. Like I have to, like, where I am in my life right now is working on being as free as possible. And it's such a strata. Like there's so many levels to freedom,
Right.
you know, and it's mostly internal.
Yes.
I could be in prison and still be free,
It's about perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like externally as an exercise, like I'm just sort of like doing my whole Marie Kondo, like getting rid of stuff, and minimizing and downsizing and diminishing. I just thought of a new word the other day, like the opposite of accumulation, decumulation.
Yeah.
So that's becoming a theme, because for me, where I am right now, is I want to be free to just start moving around more. Like one of my goals as my children are sort of growing into their adulthood is like taking my own time and my own life back,
Yeah.
and I'm a traveler. I just want to travel. I want to be like Jesus and just like not even have a home.
I feel
I just want to like move around all the time.
I feel like the last time I remember you went to Jamaica and you just seemed like your eyes were like wide open after that trip. Like you just wanted to travel. And I remember you saying that. That was the start of you being international.
Yeah. I mean, I'd been, but
I think you had said that was like one of the first few times that you had gone for just vacation.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I've been to so many places for work.
Yeah.
And you get to taste these places, sample them. But it was like, I want to go and like spend absorbent amounts of time in one place.
Yeah.
And I haven't gotten to do that really. So
yeah.
Yeah. I forgot the question, but are we?
I don't remember the question either. Okay. No, we're good with time, but well, I'll just ask you a few more. Do you feel like DJs get a bad rap? How do you feel about DJs?
It's all love and passion, because you have to leave room for the great DJs that understand, the art. DJs are artists.
Yeah.
They're soul controllers. They're, mavens and informers.
They're the driver.
Yeah.
I see them as the driver. Yes. And like they're just driving. Like for example, like you're DJing at a party or something, you're driving that party.
Exactly. You're on the wheels, you're at the wheel.
Yeah.
I think that, pop culture does what it does, mainstream does what it does, and it, co-ops and overtakes and exploits and uses and whatever. And there's a lot of good and bad in it. You know what I mean? Like, the mainstream gets a whiff of something and it's like, oh, this is a new trend. This is great. This is whatever. And so it actually provides a great deal of opportunities for DJs and artists. And so it's a tug of war. It's a push and pull. It's not all one-sided.
Yeah.
Like I can giggle and laugh and scoff at like, watching some dumbass, commercial like, Skittles or, some offbeat whatever product, McDonald's or whoever, and like exploiting the realm of DJs. And it's like, yeah, well, whatever. Like hopefully that means, good DJs are going to get more gigs.
Yeah.
So it's never just, I had to years ago, because I used to be so one-sided I was very myopic in my view of like, being anti-mainstream.
Right.
And I think it was King Britt in an article, I'm thinking it was a UK magazine, but I think it was like Accelerator or whatever, or maybe Herb, I don't remember. But someone was asking him because he had like an imprint deal with his boy Josh Wink, and what was the name of their imprint label? And it was it Sony? And so that was part of the question. The interview was like, you know, how do you feel about like being under a major? He's like, well, you know, it's like everything goes both ways. He's like, the majors help, you know, get the budget that we need to like do some of the stuff that we want to do.
That's true.
You know, he's like, so I can't hate. You know, it's got to go both ways. It's a two-way street.
Do you feel that there are a lot of people that have diluted the artistry of being a DJ?
Absolutely, but that goes with the territory of being made. You know, the mainstream samples. The mainstream is not about authenticity. The mainstream is about capitalizing on what's popular in the moment and then leaving it behind when it's no longer viable or it's no longer making money. I mean, hip hop is experiencing this in real time.
Yeah, that was another thing I was going to ask you about.
So, I mean, you know, the mainstream, it's there for what it's there for.
Right.
You know, so if you're an artist, it goes back to the conversation we were having about being an artist and the artist struggle. It's like, just make your art.
Yeah.
You know?
What do you think about like hip hop kind of leaning more into like pop? Like that never used to be the case. And actually, it's not even just hip hop, I would say like rock, just like all types of these genres that are kind of just like kind of blending into this one genre of pop.
I have good and
have you noticed that or no?
Absolutely. There's a lot of good and then there's a lot of not so good. I don't know that I'll say bad. I mean, there's a lot of corny, there's a lot of, you know, silly, there's a lot of like, you know, things that are just like just full on gimmick. You know what I mean? It's like, okay. But there's a lot of good too. Like I love the idea of like, you know, the mashup. It's like cooking. If you can do it right, you'll get something great.
Yeah.
But if you don't love it, if you don't really get it, if you're doing it to be gimmick, if you're doing it to just like try to come up with something that you think is going to work for whatever reason, and then it's going to be like, you know, bubblegum. It's going to be like whatever. It's going to be, you know, and there's stuff like that's been happening since, you know, the advent of popular music.
Yeah.
You know, like the gimmick stuff. I mean, you know.
What did you think about with like Jay-Z and Linkin Park? That was when I first started seeing like things blend.
It takes me back to like Run DMC and Aerosmith.
I was just about to say that.
You know what I mean? Like that was a breakthrough.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, you know, some hip hop and rock group is going to do something, but I don't know that that's really caught fire. But to your point of like the amalgamation of like, you know, all things kind of being funneled into this like idea of like pop music, I don't know, it's good and it can be not so good. You know, I think that the things that are really authentic and really like, hey, we have this idea and we want to make this work and we're feeling it, like, great, be in the moment, make that shit and see what happens. But for everything else, it's just gonna be, oh, I have an idea. If we could do this for that reason, and then that's just like, you know, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I haven't listened to the Jay-Z Lincoln. I mean, I don't even know what it
was
sounds
years
like.
ago.
Yeah, I mean, I remember.
This is like when I was a teenager.
But I never listened to it.
I just remember that. I was like, huh?
Yeah, so.
Do you have any rants or anything that you can go on? I love talking about rants.
I don't really have a rant. I think what's happening sort of around the world with all these, you know, wars and misinformation, you know, it just reminds me like how, you know, rampant ego is, you know, when it comes to sort of this zeitgeist, this era, that we can't see past ego in order to like really get in touch with our humanity and our commonness. You know, the current Israeli conflict.
Right.
It's just like, dude, like, can we just have a heart? Can we get past the tribalism and the gangsterism and the egoism and like realize that there are men, women, elderly, babies, children, etc., that are suffering on all sides. Like that's what I care about, and all the rest of it is like fuck off.
Yeah.
It just, it's very painful because, I start out each day and I end each day, and even throughout the day, like I want to be in alignment with like suffering, because we are not separate from it,
Right.
and so that's always like where my heart is just with, I mean, having been a father, to know that there's like children that are like just completely fucked. It just like, oh, like if I could, I would stop what I was doing and just go and like move around and just like help people.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, like ceasefire this and da 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 that. It's just like, yeah, yes, absolutely, ceasefire, please. And can we understand that the ceasefire is not about like, whose team or whose side you're on? It's like, could we think it's uncool that like babies are getting bombed,
On both sides.
like that? Yeah, like that part. Like,
Yeah.
could we do that? Like, it's no different than like growing up in South Central LA in the '80s, and being privy to like, the crack war and like the Bloods and the Crips and the essays like killing each other. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, guys, like you're all black and you're killing each other. You're Latin American, you're Mexican, you're El Salvadorian, you're this, you're that, and you're offing each other.
Yeah.
You're doing the job of a part of our species that wants you to die.
Yeah.
They're
Like
literally
you're making it easier.
programming.
Yeah.
Might as well send the KKK in to do what you're doing, and you're growing up with this mindset.
Yeah.
That like, oh, I hate this person. It's like you hate yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's a rant or not, but I mean that's just
It is.
that's been,
I
but
appreciate that rant.
that's constant. That's been there since I became like self-aware, like
Yeah.
in my adolescence. Like, oh, this is how the world works, and this is what's going on.
Yeah, and like you're mentioning, journalism is at stake right now,
Oh my god.
and it's mind-blowing what we're experiencing right now, because people are completely misinformed, and it kind of sucks because there's these big media houses that publish false information, and they're the first ones, and they have the advantage of spreading this information everywhere, versus like the authentic journalism, like the research, the actual what's happening. And that's what sucks, because a lot of people, the more I get older, I realize are very stupid. And so a lot of people are very gullible, and they're going to believe the first thing that they read. And that's where these media places like have that advantage. And
Yeah.
it's just unfortunate, and it's really sick. It makes me a little pessimistic, but I'm still trying to like fight that, because it's just all of it's wrong, all of it.
Well, things like ideas like freedom of speech, and like the philosophy of hope, and the wanting to believe that there's good. We have to realize that that's always like been in the minority.
Yeah.
I think that this world, like this zeitgeist, our era, like the history that we're most privy to, like let's say the last 10,000 years or whatever. And I'm a believer that like human beings, like mankind, have been here for at least 1 million, if not more, years. But like what we know of history, and the role that ego has played in that's led us to this, is like we have to realize we like the righteous of us, the people that want to be truly informed, the truth seekers, the people that are like, oh, like there's a oneness here, we're more connected than the mainstream wants us to understand, because that's how they continue to like run shit,
Right.
and take advantage and exploit.
Right.
We have to hang on to that. I mean, I'm like you, and sometimes it's like fuck, but it's like I always have to be hopeful, even if that becomes delusional. It's like I don't want to change that.
Me neither. There's always this, it's like an internal optimism that I have. It's not ever, I don't feel like I'll ever let it die. There are parts of me where I become a little more realistic with the way the world is, but I'm always going to be optimistic. I'm hopeful, and I still do believe most people are more good than evil.
Yeah.
So And you know, I just even doing this podcast, like I already feel as if I'm against a lot of people because I'm not entirely catering to anybody, and I'm kind of just doing this like for myself and just to have this conversation with people, like legit real conversations with people.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to like, obviously more listeners would be really cool, but it's not necessarily for that. It's more just to like be like, I'm gonna keep it real, and I'm gonna be honest with how I feel and what I'm thinking at this time, you know. But yeah, so we'll go ahead and close out. I know you probably might not want to do this, but do you have any advice for anybody as a creative or anything?
Advice is the worst vice. But you know, I don't know, guidance wise, I'm just gonna preach the gospel of Prince. I think that, meaning, you know, there was a time when he was, you know, at war with Warner Brothers, um, where he was always saying, he was telling artists the worst thing you can do, like, you know, musicians, bands, artists, the worst thing you can do is sign with a major label.
Yeah.
Commit to doing the work yourself. The benefits will far outweigh those of, you know, if you sign with a major, you know, and there were a lot of, you know, artists that challenged him.
Right.
And I understand now their point back then. But fast forward to where we are in terms of access, resources, the ability to create without the need for such, expensive, things like gear and
Right.
tours and what, like, there's so much that you can do independently now that you couldn't do 10, 15, 20 years ago. Why not be your own master?
Right.
So if I have any advice, it's just do it yourself.
Yeah.
Stay free. Because Alexis is saying, like, we're both sitting here talking about, like, lamenting the industry, meaning like the industry apparatus, the gatekeepers and the key masters, if you will, of, like, the people that hold those doors, like when you want to get that cosign or that deal or that whatever. But it's like, dude, just like do it yourself. You don't need a $50,000 camera anymore. You don't need a $1 million budget to do a video or a film. Like, do it yourself.
Yeah.
Get out there and network, meet people, go to shows. Like, just do it yourself. If you have a desire and you have the will and you're willing to work, it's going to take work, but just do it yourself. It's not any easier if you get a cosign. You just become a slave.
And then you lose yourself. And I don't want that.
Yeah.
And I don't like that. Because you start becoming who this person wants you to be, or this label wants you to be. And that you can generally speak that, that applies to almost like any art form. Just, I agree.
Stay free.
That's good.
Stay independent. Stay free.
Where can we find you?
Nowhere.
Because you don't go on social media.
No, well, I mean, I try to. I'm on.
Or you have any projects coming up, events or anything you're doing?
Kind of. There's some things in the oven. I'm writing a couple of books. One of them I've written. Now I have to get the proposal together. Could be interesting. And then I have, like, a film concept that's based on a book that I want to write about, like, my story in LA, but the underlying sort of narrative is how cities in particular, but the environment, if a person is raised in that environment, informs a great deal of their character, their style, their speech, their cadence, like their personality, So as an Angelino, like, this book I want to write, the story I want to tell is kind of a love letter to LA. So yeah, there's always something going on. But this is a new sort of, this is GT, like, getting back to, like, exploring my creative side, So I'm getting back, slowly but surely getting back to being a visual artist. But it takes a lot, just cracking open a sketchbook and drawing something is like, oh.
I know.
So,
there's that like criticism from yourself. You're like your own worst enemy in a way.
Yeah.
I feel that.
So
Thank you for doing this.
Oh, I'm proud of you, dude.
Thank you.
I feel like, hopefully, like I was part of like the reason why you decided to go for this. That's great.
It helps, honestly. The people in like that tell you you should do something, it helps encourage, like, especially someone. I had a lot of like uh I didn't have a lot of hobbies like as a kid, and I like my parents didn't really push me to do anything. So as I became an adult, it just kind of started like, I don't know what I want to do. What could I do? What should I do? So I think it just like, yeah, I think it's a little underrated to give like compliments or just suggestions to people, and you never know like how far it can go sometimes.
Absolutely.
So
No doubt.
thank you for doing this.
Keep it going, man. I got you.
Thank you.
No doubt.
All right, we'll
Thanks.
close out.
Cool. Sweet.
That was
That was
fun.
awesome. Those questions are amazing.